He was just a janitor, invisible to most, underestimated by all. Day after day, he scrubbed floors no one cared to walk on, while dreams he once had gathered dust in the shadows. But one unexpected moment in the CEO's lavish office changed everything. A strange challenge, a single piano, and a room full of people waiting to see him fail. What he did next didn't just silence the room. It shattered every assumption about who he was. And when the truth came out, no one saw it coming. Marcus Reed had spent the last 12 years pushing a mop through endless marble hallways at Goldstein & Co., one of the city's most prestigious investment firms. To the executives, he was just the janitor. No one asked about his past, his dreams, or the quiet dignity with which he carried himself. He kept his head down, worked hard, and went home to a small apartment where the rent always seemed just a little too high. But Marcus carried a secret, one that didn't fit the image people saw. A lifetime ago, before bills and broken promises weighed him down, music had been his world. His hands weren't just made for scrubbing floors. They were made for creating beauty. He hadn't touched a piano in years, until the day the CEO summoned him to the top floor. The request was odd. A grand piano stood gleaming under the golden lights of the conference room. Executives whispered, smirking, as if they already knew the ending. But Marcus didn't. Not yet. All he knew was that every eye in that room was fixed on him, waiting. Marcus stood there, the weight of the room pressing down on him. The CEO, a silver-haired man with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, leaned back in his leather chair. "Play something," he said, his tone half command, half challenge. Marcus hesitated. The polished piano gleamed under the chandelier's glow, but all he felt was the sting of 100 eyes judging him, not for his music, but for the color of his skin and the uniform he wore. A few executives chuckled under their breath. One whispered, loud enough for others to hear, "Bet he's never even touched one of these before." Marcus's pulse quickened. He had been in this building for years, invisible unless something needed cleaning. Now suddenly he was a spectacle. He knew why. The CEO's daughter, a poised young woman in designer heels, stood in the corner, arms folded. The rumor was already buzzing. Whoever could impress her would earn the CEO's favor. But there was an edge to his smile, a cruel game hidden behind a polished veneer. Marcus sat down, fingers hovering over the keys. He hadn't played in years, yet the muscle memory whispered back to life. He took a breath, ready to lose himself in the music. But just as he pressed the first note, one of the board members interrupted. "Wait," he said, smirking. "Before you start, make sure you know the stakes. You mess this up, you'll prove us right about people like you." The words sliced through him. People like you. Marcus knew exactly what they meant. This wasn't about music. It was about humiliation. They wanted him to fail, wanted to watch his dignity crumble, so they could laugh over cocktails later. Still, he began to play. The melody, Chopin, soft yet defiant, filled the room. For a moment, the tension eased, and his fingers danced with a grace that made even the smug smiles falter. But midway through, he noticed movement in his peripheral vision. The CEO's daughter had stepped closer, eyes narrowing as though searching for a flaw. The CEO himself leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, studying Marcus like a puzzle piece that didn't belong. When the final note faded, the room was silent. Not the silence of awe, but of calculation. And then, without applause, the CEO spoke again. "Interesting," he said slowly, "but music isn't everything. Tell me, Marcus, do you really think someone like you could ever be part of this family?" The words landed like a punch. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This wasn't an invitation. This was a test, one rigged from the start. But deep down, a spark ignited. If they wanted to see him break, they'd have to try harder. What Marcus didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The real humiliation was yet to come. And with it, the moment that would change everything. Marcus didn't see it coming. One moment, he was standing quietly by the piano, the faint echo of his last note still hanging in the air. The next, the CEO's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Security," he said without looking at Marcus. Two guards stepped forward, big, broad-shouldered men in black suits. Their eyes weren't curious. They were cold. One grabbed Marcus's arm, fingers digging into his skin. "You need to leave," the guard said flatly. "Leave?" Marcus's voice cracked. I work here. I was invited." "Not anymore," the CEO interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "This is a private event. We don't need the help mingling with the guests." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Not loud, not kind. The kind that twists in your gut and makes you wish you could disappear. Marcus's ears burned. Every instinct screamed at him to fight back, but he saw the cameras, phones discreetly lifted, recording. He knew how fast the story could be. Twisted. Angry janitor disrupts elite party. The guards pushed him toward the door. His shoes slid on the polished floor, his heart pounding louder than the music that had once filled the room. Faces blurred past him, some smug, some indifferent, a few looking away in shame. Not one person spoke up. As they reached the entrance, Marcus heard the CEO's final words, tossed casually over his shoulder. Some people just don't know their place. Something inside Marcus broke and rebuilt at the same time. This wasn't just about humiliation anymore. This was about every door that had been slammed in his face. Every assumption, every quiet insult that cut deeper than a shout. He turned his head, locking eyes with the CEO. His voice was steady now, almost calm. "You'll remember this night," Marcus said, "because one day the place you think I don't belong will be mine." The room went still. Even the music stopped. And for the first time, it wasn't Marcus who felt small. Marcus walked out into the cold night air, the echo of the CEO's words still pressing on his chest like a weight he couldn't shake. The city lights blurred. Not because of the rain, but because his eyes burned with the mix of rage and humiliation. He could have gone home, shut the door, buried the memory, but something in him refused to let it die quietly. That night, he wrote down every detail, every sneer, every laugh, every shove toward the door. He posted it not for sympathy, but for truth. By morning, the video had gone viral. Millions watched the guards dragging him out, the CEO's smirk frozen in high definition. Some comments were filled with outrage, demanding accountability. Others, dripping with denial, asked the same tired question. Are you sure it was about race? But Marcus knew. Anyone who had lived through it knew. Racism doesn't always wear a hood or shout in your face. Sometimes it hides behind polite smiles, company policy, and the unspoken rule that people like you should stay in the background. The incident didn't just change Marcus, it lit a fire. He began speaking at schools, community centers, anywhere people would listen. Not about anger, but about dignity. Not about revenge, but about the right to stand in any room, on equal ground without apology. And yet, as he looked at the next generation, he wondered, will they still have to fight this same fight? Or will we finally decide that enough is enough? Because racism isn't a moment in history. It's a choice made again and again by what we accept or challenge. So the question is, when the next Marcus walks into the room, will we open the door wider or slam it shut?